Meanwhile, a leading ammunition supplier is warning a revolution could be the only option for gun owners if the courts do not side with them over the government buyback scheme. Paul Clark owns New Zealand Ammunition and is a former chair of the Council of the Licensed Firearm Owners. His company supplies the police and Defence Force. He says many gun owners are being shortchanged thousands of dollars. He says they're angry and talking about taking things into their own hands. And Paul Clark is warning of a revolution if the courts don't rule in their favour.
People have been made criminals for a crime they didn't commit, and that's an injustice in itself. Because we've been penalised. Firearm owners of this country have been penalised for a crime they didn't commit.
So does that justify them committing a crime by not handing their weapons in?
Well, they can't be any worse off. And where does it stop then? You know, if government starts seizing what was several months ago legally held property, where does it really stop? I mean, if the law, you know, when you study the principles of policing, you take the population with you within reason. And in this case, I don't think that's really been done at all. We know it wasn't done, let's be quite frank. This was rushed through on a hotbed of emotion and other agendas.
So you seriously think that some people will simply not hand their weapons in, or
Yes.
they will actively hide them?
Correct. I absolutely think that will happen. I don't know what percentage will be, but it will be there. And other people will hand them in and then say, well, if I still want that type of firearm, and I'll get one on the black market regardless. It might take them 6 months to get it. It might take a year. But they'll do it. If criminals do it now, it will just expand the market for those illegal suppliers.
There is a right to appeal to the district or high court over this if you disagree with the prices, if you want to challenge that. Do you anticipate either you
Yes.
or someone doing this?
Yep, I'm absolutely sure it's going to happen.
Last time we spoke, you told me that you would take court action if it came to it. Do you still hold to that?
I've got to sit down and go through and see how much money I'm going to lose. But if I think I've lost enough, I will, absolutely. Yes, I don't have a problem with that, because if we can't access the justice system, the only alternative is revolution. Let's be honest about it, because, you know, and there's a lot of people out there who are going to feel pretty aggrieved, dealers, importers. You know, we're carrying the can for a government social policy.
So what do you mean by revolution?
Literally, what I just said. I mean, what do you got to lose? If you can't even take a thing to court anymore.
Paul, this is a very serious thing you're saying. Let's be clear. What do you mean by revolution?
Just exactly what I said, revolution, because you've got nothing to lose. If you can't even go to court over legal issues when you've been shafted anyhow, what other alternatives have you got in life?
Are you talking about a physical violent uprising? Is that what you're talking about?
That could happen, yes. Yeah, because people are aggrieved. You've been screwed by a government for a crime you didn't commit. Think about that. You think about it carefully. You have been screwed by a government for a crime you didn't commit. And they say that, well, tough luck, get used to it. What do you think? How do you think that feels with a lot of normal, level-headed people?
Is it worth going to war over, though? Is that worth going to war over, though, Paul, in your own country?
Well, it's the start of it. Where does it stop? This is the trouble with these things. Where do you stop then? You tell me. Where does it stop if people can't access the system, if they're marginalised and left out because of their beliefs, which 3 months ago were totally legal?
Only one person in Parliament voted against this legislation. So that is democracy, because if you voted, you elected that Parliament.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean you still, when you look at all the other things, like the law, and I'm not a lawyer, but the lawyers will tell you there are strong legal rights in this country about going to court on legally held property, and if the government wants to compensate it for it, to confiscate it.
Do you think that these gun laws are radicalising certain elements?
Well, from what I hear around the traps, yes, because honestly, people just feel they are being made to carry the can for an event that they had nothing to do with and didn't want to happen anyhow. It's not that they're saying, well, we're glad it happened. They're not saying that at all. But they're just seen as the easy scapegoats for a system. And overall, our firearms licensing system has actually worked very, very well. We have one of the lowest rates of armed misuse in the whole Western world.
Tell me what you're hearing around radicalisation. What are you hearing around the traps?
Well, I hear that there's a lot of pissed off people, and I don't think in some cases, if this all goes the way it is, and that it wouldn't take much to set some people off. I don't know who they'd be. I don't know them personally, but there's some pretty heavy, strong, hard feelings out there. Let's be honest about this, Lisa. It's not. Yes, a lot of people are. Well, I suppose what the hell, but like any bunch of enthusiasts, there's going to be some guys and maybe some women today who don't feel very happy about the way they've been treated by the government. And, I mean, there's all sorts of ways of protesting. And we've seen it in other social issues. We saw it in the 70s and things like that,
How far are you prepared to go, Paul? Are you a man who's keen on revolution? How far are you prepared to go?
Well, I'll have to wait and see when I go to court or what happens. But I would certainly, from a legal perspective, wouldn't be adverse to going to court to initiate actions or maybe join a class action. Because, we're all...
So why would you go to court? You say you don't have any of these guns that fit the buyback scheme.
No, but I'm in the business and I have lost money already because I had orders for guns that I had to cancel.
And you sell ammunition?
Yep, and that impacts on that because particularly the three-gun shooters and people like that go through a lot of ammunition, let's be quite blunt, and components.
So how much is this costing you?
Well, it's going to cost me quite a few $1,000s long term, for sure.
Thousands or tens of thousands? Or hundreds of thousands?
Longer term, mostly hundreds of thousands, but in the short term, tens of thousands. I mean, we only sell high-end guns, and there's lots of other people like me who sell a lot more of them, and they're going to lose a lot more money than I'll lose in that sense. And I don't think we're all going to stay there and just say, oh, well, tough luck. Who cares? I don't think that's going to happen. I think the courts are going to get quite busy in this area over the next year or two.
So is it about money rather than what some people would argue is best for the country? Is it just come down to money for you?
It's a mixture of money and principle. It's a mixture of money and principle. I feel this is bad legislation. I think it's going to ultimately boomerang on successive governments because if you make legislation that doesn't carry the majority of the people along with you on that legislation, you're going to get pushback. And I don't know what the legislation is. You're going to get pushback, guaranteed.
You, Paul, have clients, military and police are among your clients, yes?
Yep, correct.
Okay, so you are now in possession of information when you're talking about revolution and people, suggesting that they are going to do unlawful things. What have you done with that information?
I'm not going to do anything with it because I didn't create the problem. Somebody else did. They've got a little, when you do this, when you create really bad legislation, which is what we've got here, and then you're trying to gloss it all over, it's not good. It's just not good. And I think we all need to sit down, including the government, and revisit this very carefully and constructively, not by what we saw happen at the end of March, early April. That does not bode well for this country and the people in it, because it's just not a good thing. We need to sit down, and that includes Jacinda, with the sport, with the industry, and work it through and do it in a thing that satisfies and will actually produce some better results. Because
okay, so you were talking about a backtrack here. You were talking about a backtrack on the law. That's the only thing you're going to settle for?
Yeah, I think people are going to lobby for law changes. And remember, no government stays in power forever. And
okay.
I think Jacinda would be much better off. She might get a lot of publicity short term, but she'd be better off to sit down with the sport and the industry constructively, not ideologically, and look at how we can improve the quality of the legislation.
Given that is your position, sorry to interrupt you, Paul, but given that is your position, I know that you talk to politicians. So
I do.
who have you been talking to, and what are some of the parties telling you?
Well, I only talk to one side of the House, let's be quite blunt.
Which one?
National and occasionally ACT.
And what are they saying to you?
Well, they realise it's not good law too. I mean, certainly ACT voted against it, and all congratulations to David Seymour.
But he was the only one. So is National telling you behind closed doors that they would be prepared to walk this back?
I think they would certainly like to revisit it, yes, because it's bad legislation. I think from what I hear, they would really like to have this revisited sincerely, unemotionally.
So you've heard that, have you? You have heard that from them, from someone within National, a sitting MP?
Well, I've heard that they've got some misgivings because it was rushed legislation. Yes, I have heard that.
Straight from someone's mouth who is a current MP with the National Party?
I've heard it from one or two people that they think it should be looked at again seriously, yes, because...
Paul, it's important. A current MP from someone who is currently in the House, an MP, you mean?
Yep, or from what they indicated to me, that they realise it isn't good legislation and needs to be looked at. Yes, it does need to be looked at.
Who told you that?
I'm not going to say. And quite a few National MPs own firearms, let's be honest. A number of them do. And some on Labour side do too, actually.
That's New Zealand Ammunition's General Manager Paul Clark. Rangatike MP Ian McKelvey sits on the Finance and Expenditure Select Committee overseeing the gun reforms. He concedes there are flaws in the buyback scheme which leave gun owners out of pocket. He says they should be compensated 105%, not 95%. We'll hear more from him after 6 o'clock tonight.